Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. My name is Chuck Lennox with the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation. I want to welcome you to our webinar series today, Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation. The Global Alliance is an umbrella organization of international interpretive groups around the world who are working together to support the growth of heritage interpretation as a profession and support the professional development of interpreters. In closing, I'd like to remind you that interpretation is a seed, not a tree. Let's plant some more seeds.
Hello, I'm Beth Moravon, Chair of the Association for Heritage Interpretation, the UK membership organisation for natural and cultural heritage interpreters. I'm delighted to be part of the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation Steering Committee and welcome you to our webinar series, Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation.
Hello, bonjour, my name is Sarah Rao and I am the Vice Chair for Interpretation Canada. We are a community that recognizes, celebrates, debates and inspires heritage interpretation in Canada, and we are thrilled to be taking part in the GAHI webinar series. We hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Kylie Christian, President of Interpretation Australia, and I'm really glad to welcome you to the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation's webinar series. We love being part of it, and we hope you love it too.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to you all. My name is Nick, and I am the Chair of the Interpretation Network of New Zealand. We are a network designed to bring together interpretation professionals and showcase the best practice happening around our beautiful country of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Please enjoy this webinar from our international colleagues in the Global Alliance of Heritage Interpretation. Kia ora.
Hello, I'm Helena Vicic and I'm representing Interpret Europe, a European Association for Heritage Interpretation. We're very excited about this opportunity of sharing excellence across the world. We're digging up knowledge here in Europe that can have a potential to inspire colleagues from other continents, and vice versa. The inspiration in the Global Alliance is guaranteed to come back. Global Alliance of Heritage Interpretation with the webinar series is a treasure box of inspiration and good practice that promotes high standards of heritage interpretation globally.
Hi there, I am Paul Caputo, Executive Director for the National Association for Interpretation. We serve 6,000 heritage interpreters in the United States. We are thrilled to be one of the organizing partners of the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation year-long free webinar series. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm Chuck Lennox with the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation, live this time, not on film. And we're very excited to start this second year of our webinar series, Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation. I hope you like that video intro. We were very proud of that, and it really gives you a sense of who the Global Alliance is. Now I'd like to introduce Paul Caputo with the National Association for Interpretation, who is the sponsor for this particular webinar, and he'll introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chuck. Chuck is in Washington, D.C. right now, normally way out here on the Pacific coast. And so it's, here's East Coast, Chuck. Appreciate saying that. I am Paul Caputo. I'm the Executive Director for the National Association for Interpretation. This is such an exciting program, and NAI is so proud to be a partner with all of the other organizing partners who you just saw of this free year-long webinar series. And we're getting started with this very first installment of the GAHI webinar series. You're going to have 7 of them year-long. You're going to meet Caitlin and Clay from the National Park Service here in the United States shortly. I'm going to get them started with a short introductory video first. They will tell you about their amazing program that they're going to be discussing here with the Junior Agent program with the National Park Service. Which is an award-winning program that they'll be discussing. So you'll get to hear more about that in a moment. You're not here to hear me, you're here to hear the first in the 2023 GAHI webinar series. So I'm going to get you started with their introductory video. right now. Thank you all for being here.
Hey there, my name is Katie Campbell, and I am joining you from Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail headquarters here on the Missouri River in Omaha, Nebraska. The Lewis and Clark Trail spans 4,900 miles through the homelands of more than 60 tribal nations and onto the Pacific Ocean. We designed our Junior Ranger program to serve our partner sites along the trail. In partnership with these sites, we created a Junior Ranger activity journal that tells multiple perspectives, highlights the diverse makeup of the Corps of Discovery, and is widely accessible. Our book begins not with an uncharted wilderness, but with a continent bustling with native trade, art, and technology. We show that the Lewis and Clark expedition wasn't just about Lewis and Clark. The diverse skills and backgrounds of expedition members reflect the strength and diversity of the United States today. With help from tribal language programs, we've featured plant and animal names in Shinnecoawa, Nez Perce, Shoshone, Lakota, Miami-Atawenke, and Arikara. Participants can follow a link in their book to hear these names pronounced. And to make our program more accessible and to boost engagement for all, we developed read-along videos that narrate and audio describe the booklet activities. In addition, our team developed and distributed tactile maps of the Lewis and Clark Trail and distributed these to each site hosting the program. Finally, to assist partner sites, some of whom aren't familiar with the Junior Ranger program model, we developed an online partner toolkit with advice and instructional videos. So we hope that you join us and become a Lewis and Clark Trail Junior Ranger. The program is available at more than 30 locations in 13 states. Thank you to our many partners who collaborated with us, who advised us and helped us test the program. It is an honor to receive this recognition.
All right, so I'm going to invite Caitlin Campbell and Clay Hanna to turn on their cameras, and it's such an honor for NAI to be part of this series and to recognize global excellence in interpretation around the world. We're going to see that year long, and we're starting right here with the award-winning program that you all just presented with that video, and we're going to look forward to seeing programs from all of our organizing partners over the course of the year. And so I'm so excited to have this kick off this series. It's we had a very successful Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation series in 2022, and we're continuing it this year. So thanks to Clay and Caitlin for being here. I'm going to turn off my video and let you take it away from here.
Thanks, Paul. And hello, everyone. We are so happy to be on a call with you across the globe. And I'm just excited because we're surrounded by almost 100 fellow interpreters. And I can say that puts me in a happy place. I love to be with this crowd. As Paul mentioned, my name is Clay Hanna. I prefer pronouns he, him, and I serve as the program manager for the United States National Park Service. Often we call that the NPS, the National Park Service for short. And our US NPS is made up of 424 national park units that range from those large national parks that everyone knows about, Yellowstone, Yosemite, of course, the Y parks, but it also includes areas like national seashores, battlefields, historic homes, national trails, which we're going to learn about today, and other places of significance to our country and also to the world. Through the Office of Interpretation, Education, and Volunteers, and that's the office that I worked within, and that's at our headquarters in Washington, D.C., we manage the National Junior Ranger Program. And that program is spread throughout our entire national park system. And honestly, the Junior Ranger Program is a signature program of the National Park Service. And it is one of the most beloved programs in our national parks. We're really proud that annually more than 1 million kids are sworn in as Junior Rangers every single year. And it's more than just the kids, it's also their families that interact with our Junior Ranger programs. And I can remember as a frontline interpreter being in parks, some of the memories, the most memorable memories that I still carry were those memories swearing in Junior Rangers. I mean, it literally gives me goosebumps just thinking about those experiences that I had with Junior Rangers. When we talk about the National Junior Ranger Program, it's more than just booklets, though. That's what most folks are familiar with, but it is a multi-generational engagement program that helps families connect with national park resources in their own way. I mentioned that we have 424 sites. The program spans about 380 of those sites. They have some type of Junior Ranger engagement. And of course, that can look like in-park booklets, but it can also be involved in some of our national theme booklets. And those booklets have commemorated different events like the 2007 total solar eclipse that happened here in North America. There was a popular Eclipse Explorer Junior Ranger booklet. The National Park Service had our 2016 100-year centennial. So we also had a Junior Ranger program to celebrate that. And then we have a really popular Let's Go Fishing program, which encourages kids and families to get out fishing in their national parks. We also provide digital engagement for that offsite engagements, specifically through our kids portal that's listed here on the slide. We also celebrate National Junior Ranger Day, and that's coming up here in just a couple months. We celebrate that during our National Park Week that happens in April. And then, of course, our Junior Ranger program, it's all pulled together through our logo, which you can see here, and then our motto, which is Explore, Learn, Protect. And when we think about the Junior Ranger program, when it's at its best, that program is inclusive, it's accessible, it's engaging, and it provides for that memory making. That's when we're at our best. So today we're excited to celebrate an award-winning Junior Ranger program that checks all of those boxes. And that's the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail Junior Ranger program, which won our most recent Freeman Tilden Award. Now, Freeman Tilden, I think most of you might be familiar with that name, but Freeman Tilden was a National Park Service employee and a champion of interpretation. His writings and teachings, especially the 1957 book, Interpreting Our Heritage, resulted in defining our profession of interpretation and really giving quality programs based on visitor needs. And so through the creation of this award, it was created in 1981, for outstanding achievement in interpretation, it really helped spark a new surge of creativity across the service. So in his name, we annually honor great interpreters who follow in the footsteps of Freeman Tilden. So I'm proud to pass the presentation mic to my colleague and the most recent recipient of the Freeman Tilden Award for Excellence in Interpretation, and that's Caitlin Campbell. And Caitlin is being honored for her Junior Ranger program at Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. And that's really the real show today. So I'm going to pass it to Katie. Katie, please take it away.
Well, thanks, Clay. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining. Today, it is my pleasure to share with you something that we're really passionate about and that we are proud of, and that is this Lewis and Clark Trail Junior Ranger program, something that we think shows how this Junior Ranger idea can be used to tell stories in ways that are more inclusive and more accurate. And I'd like to share today about how we took steps to make this really fun, classic kids experience more accessible and available to everyone. So today we'll share our process for creating strong interpretive messaging that aligns with our goals and our mission. I'll talk to you about how we collaborated to bring in more perspectives, more voices, and then we'll cap off the presentation today talking about some really fun, cool bonus features that boost engagement and increase accessibility. But first, let's dive in to telling an old story in a new way. I'd like to introduce you to Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. And, you know, in the United States, these two gentlemen don't really need an introduction because, you know, they're not only famous, Lewis and Clark, their story and the expedition that they led, it is embedded in our idea in the United States are ideas about the West and wilderness, and even, how we think of ourselves. Somewhere in our subconscious, this famous historic event and story really, really is important to who we are. And that's why it's so important to tell that story right. But put simply, who are Lewis and Clark? They were the captains of the Lewis and Clark expedition of 1803 to 1806. And that expedition traveled almost 8,000 kilometers, nearly 5,000 miles across North America. And it was a pretty incredible feat. So the way that this story usually begins is with this massive area of land that was purchased by the United States from France. So we have the Louisiana Purchase. It makes up this huge area of North America. And the Lewis and Clark expedition sets out in 1803, leaving Pennsylvania, traveling all the way across Great Plains, over the Rocky Mountains, onto the Pacific Ocean, and back again, taking 3 years. But the way that this story is usually told, it paints it as they go out and they discover this uncharted wilderness. And over the years, this incredible story, which was captured meticulously by Lewis and Clark in journals, this story has gotten distilled down. It's become almost myth and legend, and it's been misremembered. And oftentimes people really only think of these two guys, Lewis and Clark. At one point there was kind of there have been many waves of public interest in this story, and including Sacagawea or Sacagawea, the young Shoshone woman who went along with the expedition. She becomes more remembered as being part of the story, but her involvement is more myth and legend than really anything accurate. But it's more than even just the three of them. The Lewis and Clark story is filled with this really diverse group of people who, because of their diverse backgrounds, brought different languages and skills. You can see it kind of aligns with our Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation. So you have these expedition members like York. York was an enslaved Black man who went along on the entire expedition, hunting, rowing, laboring alongside everyone else. He's a character that you don't hear about in history as much. And then there's George Drew Yard, who was French Canadian and Shawnee. He spoke Indian Sign Language and French and was one of the most valued members of the expedition. So I'm hoping I'm kind of painting for you this story that is beloved and it's famous, but there's been issues in the way that it's been told for the last 200 years. And again, one of those issues is this idea that we've got this untrammeled wilderness that's just up for grabs, this romantic idea, when I think all of us know that in reality, all of that land was already inhabited by this complex network of indigenous people. And these people all had their own art, technology, cultures, languages. So we've got this old story, but luckily, because this story is so important, we've got an organization under the National Park Service that is kind of the steward of this story. And here we are. This is the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. We're the longest trail in the national trail system in the United States. Again, almost 8,000 kilometers, 4,900 miles, crossing 16 states and the territories of more than 60 Native nations. But we're different than a normal trail or sendero that you might think of. You can bike and walk and paddle across sections of the trail, but really more than a literal route, we're also a network. We work with more than 100 historic, cultural, natural sites across the country. And together we partner with these sites to tell this really important story. So that's Lewis and Clark. That's the Lewis and Clark Trail. And we knew a couple years ago that we wanted to have a Junior Ranger program. And so we're going on this journey to use the Junior Ranger program to tell this story. But the first thing that we did was we looked around and thought about what perspectives are classically not included in the Lewis and Clark story, and how can we bring those perspectives in? Now, fortunately for me, I joined the Lewis and Clark Trail about 3 years ago, but our program under the National Park Service for decades has been doing incredible and difficult work to include more voices of tribes along the trail. Pictured here, this is Gerard Baker. He is Mandan and Hidatsa. And during the Lewis and Clark Trail bicentennial of 2003 to 2006, during that time period, our superintendent was Gerard, and he led this massive effort to collect the stories and the perspectives of tribes. So by the time that I got to Lewis and Clark Trail just a couple years ago, you know, we already had friends, which is awesome. All of that hard work and effort to build trust and relationships was something that those of us planning the Junior Ranger program got to take advantage of. So we reached out to our friends, our National Park Service colleagues, fellow interpreters who had tribal affiliations. Pictured here is friend of the trail, Ranger Vivian. She's at Nez Perce National Historical Park in Idaho. So her and a couple of other interpreters with tribal affiliations, we reached out. We started just kind of running our ideas by them and asking, you know, what do you think a kid should get out of a program like this if they pick up this program at your park? So we had some good conversations, we got some feedback, we took those notes, and then we held those notes closely as we move forward in planning. We also wanted to dispel a pervasive myth that Lewis and Clark discovered all these plants and animals when they went west. Of course, you can't discover, let's say, a salmon when people have been living with salmon for thousands of years. So we reached out to native language programs along the Lewis and Clark Trail, and we received really positive and generous feedback when we asked them, hey, what do you think if we showcase plants and animals in Indigenous languages? I'll say that we didn't have any assumptions or expectations that they would want to be involved or would trust us in this sharing of this information. But they did, and they were really excited to collaborate. So we took that idea and carried that forward too. And we also reached out to accessibility experts. I think Clay painted a nice picture for you all of just how popular and how fun the Junior Ranger program is in the United States. It is just a pinnacle of kids' experiences. And so we have a duty to make sure that this awesome program is available for everyone. And in particular, in our discussions with accessibility experts, as we started planning this program, we realized that participants who are blind or their parents, their guardians who are blind really weren't finding a lot of options for how they could engage. So we wanted to work on that. Okay, so in our planning process, I love planning. You can never have too much planning. So after all this planning and collaborating, we still needed to get down all of our ideas. And we created a document that was kind of like a map or a compass for us. And if you're on the call today and you are thinking about creating a program or updating a program kind of like this, my biggest piece of advice is to really invest your time and energy in the beginning to make sure that you know exactly exactly what you want to do, exactly what you want to say, who it's for, and where you're going. So we created this plan. We looked at our mission as a National Historic Trail, our congressional mandate under the National Trail System. We looked at these other plans and vision statements that we had been working for. In the National Park Service, we have long-range interpretive plans that are awesome because they outline really well your visions, your big themes. We interpreters love themes. So we looked at all of that and we pulled out our goals, we pulled out our key messages, and we also looked closely at our audience. For us along the Lewis and Clark Trail, like I showed you, we work with partners, more than 100 of them. And these partners, they range from federal land management agencies, all kinds of different agencies, state parks, county parks, heritage centers, museums, tribal heritage centers. And these sites also range in their focus on the Lewis and Clark story. So we thought through all of our partner sites, and we thought through the variety of junior ranger visitors that might pick this program up. And we did the work to make sure that we had a good vision moving forward. And then finally, it's time to start actually planning our activity booklet, which is kind of the classic cornerstone in the Junior Ranger program model. So again, a strategy that we used in planning that I really recommend, that we found a lot of value in, was creating like a book map or an outline that's really detailed and begins with a big overview so you can see where your book is going to cover your different key messages, and where you can start to take your great ideas and your themes and start to focus them down so that everything feels a little bit more manageable. Let's see. So for example, looking here at our book outline, we said, okay, we're going to talk about diversity of the Lewis and Clark expedition on the page 5 and 6 spread. Done. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Natural history, we'll talk about it on the 9 and 10 spread. So this helps you see your book, where it's going, and what you're going to cover. I've got 3 activity examples I'll share with you. I'll share our outline for how we were thinking about those activities, and then what we ended up creating. So here is one that, we right away wanted to have an activity that did essentially 3 things. And on our activity outline here, we've got those 3 key messages right on top. So those key messages are, number 1, when the core of discovery set off, the continent was already bustling with trade, art, and innovation. Number 2, each tribe along the Lewis and Clark Trail is unique with its own innovations, food, and art and culture. Number 3, wherever you are standing on someone's homeland. So these 3 key messages became this activity on tribal lands. The first thing kids do, they pick up our booklet. This is the first spread that they see. And the first activity that they do is find out whose homeland they're standing on. Some of you might know Native Land Digital. They're actually a website out of Canada. And we reached out to them. They have this fantastic interactive map of tribal homelands. We reached out to them, asked them if we could use that link in our booklet. And again, we got a really generous, enthusiastic response. They said, yes, that's awesome. Please do it. And in return, they asked us to write a blog post about our program that we could share on their channels. So we got some cool cross promotion. So they find out whose homeland they're standing on, and then they use these clues and this illustrated map of the different tribes of the West to fill in 3 missing tribes. They need to find out where the Mandan, the Shoshone, and the Clatsop would be based on the clues in this paragraph and the visual clues on this map. You can also see, looking on our outline here, in this planning process, we had room to use notes to remind ourselves of what our National Park Service colleagues who are Native, what they were telling us. So Alicia Deegan, she is the superintendent at Knife River Indian Villages. She had an idea that was just so elegant and brilliant and simple. And of course, we didn't think of it. She thought of it. She said, just have a spot on the booklet where if kids are Native and they're part of one of these tribes, where they can circle it and you invite them to circle it. It's awesome. So of course we did that. Okay, here is another example. We knew that we wanted to have an activity that addressed this theme. Here is the theme. Without the shared food, knowledge, and skills of tribes, the Lewis and Clark expedition likely would not have succeeded in crossing the continent. We kept that theme right on the top of this planning worksheet here. And then that idea became this activity. This is one that everyone likes, because who doesn't like a maze? But we made this maze that isn't just your normal maze that you can scribble your way through, and maybe it isn't as engaging. In this maze, we present the junior rangers with a real scenario that the Lewis and Clark expedition encountered, where they were in some way reliant on tribes. They have to pick which way they'll go in the maze, and let's take one of those examples. So let's see, we'll start on the 3rd scenario, and it goes like this. It's spring. The Hidatsa offer information about the journey ahead. They offer information about where to find the Shoshone. So your choice is explore for yourselves or follow Hidatsa advice. Well, if you explore for yourselves, you're going to end up stuck in the maze, stuck in the Rocky Mountains, which is true. But if you follow Hidatsa advice, eventually you'll find your way and you'll find the Shoshone. So here's just an example of where we take a very simple concept of a maze, but we make it interpretive. We bring it that next step in a way that aligns with all of our key messages and the story that we're trying to tell. And every single one of these scenarios, again, is a real situation that the expedition encountered, and it's one that underscores this main theme of how important tribes are. And then here is one more example. We wanted to highlight all of, or some of, the awesome members of the Lewis and Clark expedition that people just don't know about. And one of the key messages we wanted to convey was this: the diversity of the Lewis and Clark expedition shows the strength and value of diversity in the United States. So we took that theme and that goal, and we created this activity called Members of the Expedition. This activity, again, it's fun because it uses a code, and who doesn't like a code? So kids use this little code and they find out the names of these 4 expedition members who are lesser known. That's pretty much what this activity is about. There's also a cool little translation chain activity. You guys will have to get your book. You can check it all out. Now, I will level with you, my interpretive professionals here. I have never seen a kid pick up this book, do this activity, and say, oh, wow, the strength and value of the Lewis and Clark expedition's diverse members reflects the strength and value and diversity in the United States today. No, this is a theme that's big. Kids might not necessarily grasp that fully and entirely, but it's still there. A fun activity should still support your main messages, your main ideas. And, I'll put it this way. When I was a kid and I picked up any kind of book about Lewis and Clark, someone like York was just like a little, was featured as a background character, never was front and center, never was front stage. So we're pretty happy with how those turned out. Okay, so we did all this planning, all of this collaborating. We even had a testing period for the book where we put out a draft of the booklet and saw how it went, took it back, did some editing. We did all of that, but we still wanted to make sure that we were making this story that we spent all this time to tell in an intentional and inclusive way. We wanted to make sure that that was accessible. So here is the booklet at Pompey's Pillar National Monument. And on the cover of the booklet is a link that one could go to. So that brings us to the end of the presentation today. We're going to talk about our cool bonus features. So that link brings participants to these read-along videos. You will remember when I was talking about collaborating and talking with accessibility experts, this program that is so popular and so fun, there just aren't as many examples of how that is supporting blind participants, blind adults. We wanted to see more examples of how they could also have fun and engage. And we didn't want to create a substitute product that is just brought out for participants who need an accommodation. We wanted to create something that's universally designed, something that is really helpful for those folks who need an accommodation, but that everybody wants to use. So that is our read-along videos. For each activity spread in the booklet, there is one video that goes with that activity. So there is no app required. All someone does is just type in that link that's on the front of the cover, or even just search it in their web browser. And you will come to our National Park Service website that has these read-along videos. These videos not only narrate the text in the booklet, what's being said, the directions, etc. They also give a description of whatever imagery is on screen. And we found that this isn't just helpful for blind folks, folks who maybe have dyslexia or in some way prefer an accommodation where they don't have to actually read. There you go, you've got it read out loud. And we had so much fun making these and realizing like all these ways that we could kind of jazz them up and make them more fun. So on the bottom of this activity, there is a quote from Meriwether Lewis. And we had one of our interpreters who did living history presentations of Meriwether Lewis. We had him read the quote and kind of bring that to life. That was pretty fun. And then we got to do this thing I think is so cool. We got to literally include voices of people whose perspectives are so valuable to this story. So here is our last activity in the activity booklet. It's called Storytellers on the Trail Today. And there's our friend, Ranger Vivian from Nez Perce National Historical Park. And so if you go online and pull up this read-along video, you'll actually hear Ranger Vivian in her own words and in her own voice talking about the perspective of the Namipu Nez Perce people on the Lewis and Clark expedition and saying in her own words, the Nez Perce are still here today, which is awesome. You can also hear the voice of Hassan Davis. He's a living history actor and activist who portrays York. And you can hear him in his own voice, in his own words. You can hear him talking about what it's like for Black Americans wrestling with the story of York and his legacy, being such a valuable member of the expedition, but also being enslaved. I will have a link at the end of the slideshow here that'll get you onto our Park Service website where you can go find all these videos, and I hope that you have fun doing that later. But our accessibility work, it wasn't done, because another thing that we heard from accessibility professionals is that folks who are blind or low vision often don't have access to maps, not only the trip planning information that maps provide, but the storytelling that maps provide. And for us, our map is such a crucial part of our story. It is our story as a National Historic Trail. The incredible feat of this group of diverse people crossing North America and coming back 3 years later when everyone had given them up for dead, that story is told by our map, and we wanted to make that available to everyone. So we worked with a vendor who does custom thermoformed plastic maps, and we created a map of the Lewis and Clark Trail that not only has the topography and the relief of North America, but also has indentations along the coastlines. And then the trail itself is sunken into the map so that without your eyes, you can still feel your way across the trail. These tactile maps also have a braille panel at the bottom that gives information about the names of the rivers, the states, the route that the trail goes through. We've consulted and tested and even found some ways to improve, but in general, we've had a lot of really enthusiastic reaction to this program. Someone who walks into or enters a space where they're not used to being thought of and accommodated for, we've gotten to witness a couple times firsthand now how transformative it can be to have a product waiting for them there, and a product that everyone thinks is cool. So these tactile maps are available at all of the 30+ locations across the country that host the program. There's still more left to do, as you guys all know, there's always something. We really think that we can improve how available this program is to young kids and neurodiverse participants. We're still kind of learning about plain language tactics and practices, and we might even go back into this product that we're proud of and go edit it in that lens. So we're thinking about those things. We're also recognizing that, yeah, you know, I can pull my smartphone out and type in a link and pull up these cool videos, but not everyone has that. So that's an issue that we're aware of, and you know, it could be cool one day if we can find some funding to support our 30+ host sites, maybe having some kind of technology that stays in the visitor center that's available if kids need it. So we're working on it, revising, editing, you know. But one more bonus feature for you all. You remember that when we were talking to our friends in these native language departments across the Lewis and Clark Trail, we wanted to use and highlight Indigenous names for plants and animals. So we did that in this nature journaling activity. And the cool bonus feature about this is that there's a link on the bottom left corner of this booklet page, and participant can go to this link, pull up our National Park Service website. Again, there's no app required for this. They can pull that up, and then they'll see a page that has all of these plants and animals, their photo, and then audio clips where you can actually hear those names being pronounced by Indigenous speakers. So when you guys all check this out later and pull up this webpage, you can pull it up. And then the first one you'll see is the butterfly. And you can just click that button and hear an Arikara speaker saying Sawi Taka, which is the Arikara name for butterfly. Man, we've had a lot of fun making this program. I think you can tell. It certainly has been so great sharing this program with you today. It's been amazing seeing it in action across the Lewis and Clark Trail. We started with a little over 30 host sites, and now that number is growing and growing. And as proud as we are when we go and we see it in action, really the time I feel most proud is when we look back on the good planning that we did in the beginning and looking back at our goals. So reflecting on that, we had the goal to expand this very important story beyond Lewis and beyond Clark. They've had an amazing accomplishment. No one's forgetting them, but we want to make space for all the other cool parts of the story too. We wanted to provide a high quality interpretive tool to our partner sites. In the National Park Service, we simply have more funding and staff capacity than a lot of these small sites do, and making one program and giving it to these sites free of cost in order to tell the story together. That was something that we wanted to do. We built more relationships and more partnerships over the course of planning, which was awesome. We are showing people how really cool the National Trail System is, because it is amazing. It's about telling stories that transcend one place. It's so cool, especially for us interpreters. And then my favorite part, when we set out, we really wanted to use this program to strengthen the community of Lewis and Clark trail interpreters across the country. We wanted to build this community among our partners. And we certainly were able to do that, seeing the program come to life across the Lewis and Clark Trail, having our partners who are Junior Ranger host sites meet each other, collaborate with each other. Sometimes the Junior Ranger book gets picked up at one location and turned in at another location. So it's just been really, really cool, a good way for us to get to know our own partners, for them to get to know us in the National Park Service, and for all of us to work together in this shared mission of telling this old, important story in a new, inclusive, and accessible way. So I hope that you had some fun today and found something of value to your program. Clay and I are going to be here to answer your questions and to talk more about Junior Ranger programs and interpretation. I want to thank the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation for hosting us today. I want to thank all of you for the great work that you're doing across the globe, making the world a better place through interpretation. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share this program.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Clay. I wish you could hear applause, at the end of these, right? Like I feel it's like the one thing that's missing here. We do have a couple questions in the chat, and Chuck and I, we can help relay those to you. The first one came in about 10 minutes ago from Clay Hansen. How do you prevent link rot for such a key accessibility feature?
So how we are going to show our link is something that we've thought a lot about, and I think we haven't quite gotten there yet. We're also thinking about doing maybe a QR code to get to those accessible features. Now, one thing that's kind of in our favor is the fact that these booklets are in print booklets. They get printed, they get distributed, they go off into the world. So we do have the opportunity every time we do a new reprint to think about, to update that link, to think about how we want to present that link. But if you have any suggestions for that, let us know.
That was the first time I had heard the term link rot as well. So
Very
Me too.
interpretive way to talk about a tech issue. I like it.
But we all knew what it was. That's the
We did.
interesting thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Very good imagery.
sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
Another question that was posted in the chat was, what was the budget for this project?
So most of the cost for this project came in printing materials. I am an employee of the National Park Service at the Lewis and Clark Trail, and I'm the creator of this program. I did the graphic design, the writing, the leading, the illustration, along, of course, with all of our collaborators. But in a way, that was already a locked-in cost. You know, my salary was nothing new. But as far as budget, one component that was expensive was those tactile maps to create that thermoform model and create those maps that went out to our trail sites. You know, that was over $10,000, but a good component of that is locked in. It's a model that can be duplicated at a lower cost. And then when it comes to printing, all these materials were printed because we're a federal agency in the United States. We go through the GPO, the Government Printing Office, and we had funds in our GPO account kind of queued up to do this. But you know, it takes some money every time we do a printing, especially with supply chain issues. A booklet can be 50 cents each. It could be $1 each. So I hope that some of those numbers kind of get you to our budget. I don't have one total number in my mind, but those are some of the pieces.
There are a handful of great questions here. One of them that's come up a couple of times is, what was the time frame from beginning to end for this project?
Time frame for this project was about a year and a half to get it off the ground. So I joined the Lewis and Clark Trail January 2020, nothing coming around the corner, right? And then COVID hit. So yeah, it took about a year and a half, you know, along with other things that we had on our docket to get the program launched.
Another question on here is, what advice would you give us to reaching out to Native communities?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that I can give you my very limited advice in the context of this program, but that as I'm sure you all know, you know, you'll want to talk to anyone who is Native who has better advice than I can give you. But I'll tell you the things that we kept in mind. The first thing is that, like I said, we weren't starting from scratch. And I think that's really important. I don't know if we didn't have relationships and trust already built by people decades before me, I don't know that we would have reached out in the way that we did, because you can't start reaching out with an ask. You can't introduce yourself to tribes by asking them for something when you haven't given anything up yet first. So that's part of it. I'd say my advice is to really look at your program and what you've already done to build relationships and trust. And then my second thing that we were keeping in mind is just that idea of having zero expectations, being totally ready to be not responded to or told no, because that's fair, that's valid. Yeah, I guess those are my two pieces of advice.
Katie, if I
Well,
could,
and so often in these projects, you have to be patient.
And if I could add to that, I think, you know, one thing we struggle with as a National Park Service is employees move around to different parks. They often move around to move up. And they might have established an amazing relationship with the tribe, but then they've moved on to a new site. And so what we're seeing is, if we can make that a park effort, not just an individual effort, to really establish those relationships with local tribes, it's that consistency and that connection across many different people as people come and go, all the way from the superintendent down through the staff. That's been successful and super important as we approach local tribes.
An institutional relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Another terrific question is, what do you do about sites that don't have cell service or Wi-Fi?
Yeah, that's a question we asked ourselves too, and yeah, we don't have an answer for that yet. In part, one of the ways that it works for us is because our program is only hosted at sites that have a visitor contact station, and at this point, just about all of them have cell phone service or Wi-Fi, but no, that's something that we're still thinking about because these cool bonus features are not available if you're not connected to Wi-Fi or cell phone service. And again, if anyone else has ideas, because I'm thinking about this idea in the rest of the National Park Service where it's much more common not to be connected. I haven't figured that out yet, except for that you can download them ahead of time if someone has the foresight to be able to do that.
Here's an interesting question too. Among your goals, have you worked with emotions too?
Yeah, interpretation, universal concepts, emotions, absolutely. In our long-range interpretive plan, there's an entire section about the Lewis and Clark story being a gateway for visitors to kind of come to some of these emotions that the expedition might have felt and that tribes might have felt. So that maze activity that I showed you all, one of our sub goals in that activity was to get at that. And we actually invite participants in that activity. We invite them to go to the interpreters at their site and ask, like, in so many words, what was the vibe here? You know, was there celebration? Was there collaboration, or was there conflict and tension? Because it varied depending on where the expedition was and the scenario.
So Antonieta Jimenez, who is from another Gahi partner, Interpat MX in Mexico, she asks whether you collected opinions from locals after the implementation of the program.
We haven't done that in a formal way, more of in an anecdotal way. We've been receiving that kind of feedback passively as it comes into us. But I like that idea, and it would be great to do more of that. One way that we can kind of gauge the feedback from locals is we work with our partner sites, and anytime there's some news like the Tilden Award, we do a press release and we give it to our partner sites as a template that they can customize to make it a little bit more about them, and then they put it out to their local community. And we have seen a couple of those get picked up by local press and newspapers. But no, I like your idea of getting out and getting a better feel for it.
Are there similar models with local tribes that are being used in parks in DC?
That's a great question. And I will say, as we think about our National Park Service in general, it's pretty decentralized, meaning a lot of the management is really at the local level. And so it's really up to each individual park unit, whether or not they establish a junior ranger program, what type of program they establish. And so it's really kind of up to those individual parks on what that could look like. We could probably dig up some other examples, but this is honestly a banner example, and thus award-winning for its collaboration around accessibility, but also with local tribes and being extremely inclusive. So this is the gold standard moving forward.
All right, we have 1 minute left, so I'll ask you a simple, easy question here. Have the interpretive products been tested by groups of people with functional diversity for their evaluation? That's a simple 1 minute answer, right?
The interpretive products that we've tested in the realm of folks who are going to need a specific need, our tactile maps, we've worked with the American Council of the Blind. We were so lucky that the American Council for the Blind had their annual conference in Omaha this summer. So we had a big group of folks in. They were testing those tactile maps, and they gave us feedback. I mean, overwhelmingly positive, but we got a couple notes. Like, for example, one of the feedback they gave is that they would appreciate more Braille labels on the tactile map. So like a Braille label on the Pacific Ocean, just in a couple more places to help them orient. We still want to do more testing for the read-along videos. Again, we're kind of getting passive feedback on that, but we want to up the ante and get some more testing. So again, we can edit. We did have, the Park Service has a relationship with University of Hawaii and Dr. Brett Opegard, who does a lot of audio description work. And we had him review some of our read-along videos, and he was the one that advised us to put plain text audio description above our videos. So we've done a little bit of work in that area. Like I said, we really want to do a better job reaching younger participants and neurodiverse participants, but we've got some work left to do to do that evaluation.
Well, Katie and Clay, we really want to thank you for your program today. It was very exciting to see all the possibilities with interpretation. And I'll repeat my statement before, which I think originally I remember comes from the National Park Service, is that interpretation is seed, not a tree. So you've definitely planted a lot of seeds in our minds and seeds across the country in ways of doing interpretation in an innovative way. Thanks again, and join us next time for the next webinar, which will be March 16th, hosted by the Association for Heritage Interpretation in Great Britain.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.